Thank you, Shobha, and thank you, CNS, and all the co-organizers of She and Right session. My name is Numan Afifi. I'm speaking on behalf of APCOM Foundation, Thailand. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Rio in person, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to share how the rising tide of anti-rights and anti-gender backlash is threatening the AIDS response and what is our communities in Asia and the Pacific are asking the world to do about it. Let me start with where we are. The global HIV response has overall delivered an extraordinary progress. Since 2010, the world has cut new HIV infections by over 40% and AIDS-related death by 57%. Last year, 32 million people were on treatment, a number that would have been impossible 2 decades ago. But this progress is fragile. In 2025 alone, 1.2 million people still acquire HIV, and someone still dies of an HIV-related cause every single minute. The hardest part of the work that remains depends entirely on reaching people who are most at risk. And here's the problem. Just as the response faces an unprecedented funding crisis with deep cuts to HIV programs all around the world, it is being hit by a second crisis, an organized, well-funded anti-rights and anti-gender backlash. These two crises are not separate, they compound each other. Money is being pulled away at the very moment that political attacks are making the work harder. And this is happening at a decisive moment. The world has just adopted the new political declaration on HIV, and UNAIDS has set out its strategy through 2031. The direction is agreed. What is now in question is whether political will and the rights environment will hold long enough to deliver on this. So what does this backlash actually looks like? It's worth being specific here because this is not an abstract mood, it is a strategy. On the first front is legislation. We're saying family values bill and the so-called anti-propaganda laws that recriminalize same-sex relation, sex work, and gender expression. In our parts of the region, protections that were on their way are now being pushed back out. Second, in international instruments, documents like the Geneva Consensus Declaration and the proposed African Charter on Family, Sovereignty, and Values are being used to rewrite global health and human rights norms, to redefine family and gender in ways that erases the people that we serve. Third, defunding and disinformation. Community organizations are starved of resources, while LGBTQ plus people and the very idea of gender are framed as dangerous foreign ideology. The tactics differ from country to country, but the goal is always the same: to roll back the rights that make an HIV response effective and possible at the first place. Why does this matter for HIV specifically? Because criminalization and stigma don't make key population disappear. They actually push people away from testing, treatment, and prevention. And the effects are measurable in who this epidemic hits the hardest. Globally, the risk of acquiring HIV is 80 times higher among gay men and other men who have sex with men, 17 times higher among transgender persons. It is 34 times higher among people who inject drugs and 17 times higher among sex workers. UNAIDS is clear that this risk is driven by marginalization, discrimination, and criminalization, not by who people are. Stigma also works quietly. A young gay man who fears arrest will not walk into a clinic. A trans woman who has been turned away once may never come back. Every law that treats our communities as criminal is in practice a barrier to test the medicines and the prevention that end this epidemic. When you criminalize people who most affected, you lose them from the response. And when budget are cut, they are cut first from exactly the community-led services that are reaching this group, widening the gap even further. In my own region, PrEP, which is one of our most powerful prevention tools, reaches about only 2.5% of people who need it. Even as Fiji, the Philippines, and Papua New Guinea grapple with some of the fastest rising epidemics in the world. The backlash is not making this better, it is making it worse. And yet, I don't want to leave you only with the threat, because that is not the whole story. Where the HIV response works, it works because communities build the trust that formal systems could not. Key population-led organizations deliver testing, self-testing, PrEP, and peer support to people the health system rarely reaches. We have seen it again and again. When a peer educator, someone from the same community, offers a test without judgment, people come forward who had the system had written off. APCOM has carried the voices of Asia Pacific communities to every international AIDS conference since 2010. That infrastructure of trust, built over decades, is precisely what this backlash puts at risk. And protecting it is the most practical thing we can do for the epidemic. So what are we asking for? APCOM's calls are clear and concrete. First, decriminalize same-sex relation, sex work, and drug use, and protect the rights of trans and gender diverse people. Second, protect and directly fund community-led organizations with sustained, predictable financing that actually reach the country level. And third, reject regressive instruments like Geneva Consensus Declaration and the Draft African Charter, and close the prevention gap by scaling up PrEP. Because human rights are not separate from HIV response, they are the response. I'll leave you with this. When we defend rights of the most marginalized, we defend the health of everyone. Rights are not a luxury of the response, they are the foundation. Thank you to CNS, Shoba, and to everyone in this room and online. APCOM stands with you. So let's rethink, rebuild, and rise together. Thank you.